At the end of First Chronicles, we see the transition of King David to King Solomon, and as he bids him new rules on how to reign, we can discover principles of good stewards. In fact, God's stewards on earth. Stewardship is perhaps the Bible's most clearly explained and established purpose for the human race. And while it is the vocation of all human beings, it is beautifully broad enough in scope to allow for individual calling and creativity. A steward is a representative manager, someone who stands in for an authority figure. Matthew 25:14-30 and Luke 12:42 confirms this. A steward's overall responsibility is to carry out the will of his or her boss. The steward may have freedom to act within broad parameters or be given specific detailed instructions. Either way, the person is expected to faithfully carry out his or her duty just as the master would. Anything the master gives to the steward becomes the individual's responsibility to manage for the master's pleasure. King David understood that everything man possesses in life has been given to him by God. Thus, everything we have, the manifold grace of God, is to be managed by his people as good stewards of that grace. 1 Peter 4:10 tells us this. That grace is responsible for our life and health, our time, talent, and treasure, our spiritual gifts, and our abilities. Everything is to be administered by us for God's glory. The Apostle Paul considered the apostles to be stewards of the mysteries of God, thereby obliged to demonstrate the key requirement of a steward. Moreover, it is required in stewards that one be found faithful. 1 Corinthians 3:1 and 2. Faithfulness, we could say also loyalty or trustworthiness, is the critical character trait of a steward. When the authority figure is absent, the boss must have complete confidence in the steward's faithfulness to carry out his or her will. A helpful human illustration of faithful stewardship is Joseph, during his tenure as steward over Potiphar's household in Egypt. Potiphar, a powerful Egyptian authority, purchased Joseph as a slave and in time made him the overseer of his household and possessions, Genesis 39:6, giving Joseph the authority to manage everything. Likewise, man was appointed by God to be the steward over God's creation. Man's authority was established when he was created in the image of God, Genesis 1:26 and 27. The Hebrew word for image is the same used in the Old Testament to refer to physical likenesses or statutes. Numbers 33:52, 1 Samuel 6:5, and Daniel 2:31 tells us this. But because God is spirit, as in John 4:24, human beings do not represent his physical likeness. Rather, as God's representatives, they represent his authority on earth. Humanity's assignment, as it was given to Adam and Eve, was multifaceted: to have dominion or act as rulers and overseers over every living thing that moves on the earth, and to be fruitful and multiply, filling the earth and subduing it. This was Genesis 1:26-28 and 2:15. Now after the fall, Adam and Eve were put on notice that their responsibilities would be more difficult. In Genesis 2:16-19 we see this. When humans failed completely in this role, God destroyed all of them except for Noah's family, Genesis 6:5-8. To Noah, God repeated a shortened version of the stewardship responsibilities given originally to Adam and Eve. See Genesis 9:1. It was then proclaimed throughout the rest of the Old Testament era. We see it in Psalms 8:4-8. For you have made mankind a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and honor. You have made him to have dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, even the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea. Utmost in the New Testament, Christian stewardship responsibilities is carrying out God's will concerning the gospel. Christ's last assignment to the leaders of his fledgling church was to make disciples in all the nations, teaching them the very things Christ had taught his disciples, in Matthew 28:19-20. Christ was a steward of God in coming to earth, doing nothing of his own but only what the Father had given him to do. John 4:34, 5:19 and 30, 6:38, 8:28 and 42 tells us all this. As God sent Christ into the world, so Christ has sent us. John 20:21. And what a most high and wonderful calling, to be the servant of the living Most High God, the Almighty, the only Lord.